on mathematics in ancient Jain literature. We have with us Professor S G Dani, the chair of the School of Mathematical Sciences, DAE Center for Excellence in Basic Sciences, Mumbai. He has made several extensive research contributions in many areas of mathematics, contributing over 100 papers in international journals. He has been on the editorial board of several international journals and was the editor of the Proceedings of the Indian Academy of Sciences. He is currently the editor of Ganita Bharati, the Bulletin of Indian Society for the History of Mathematics. Welcome, sir. And a PGDM in marketing from BIMM Pune with a UGC net accreditation in the subject of management. He also writes for the Young Bhaskar magazine by Dainik Bhaskar on themes like mental wellness and storytelling. As of now, he is pursuing his MA in counseling psychology. I hereby welcome our esteemed guests and request you to please embrace this session.
Well, namaskar, Devi or Sajjano, and welcome to this session. So, welcome back to the City of Lakes. And so, I would like to begin by addressing the elephant in the room, mathematics, and the fear for it. The fear that we have as conventional Indian education system. And to be very honest, whilst I was going through the literature that you have composed, sir, the fear of mathematics was dispersing a little bit. But I would still like to understand, why is there fear instilled in individuals, especially in our Indian education system that pass through Indian education system? What is the reason?
Yeah. I'm very happy to be here, and I thank the organizers for this occasion to be an opportunity to be with you to spread some of my ideas about, and in particular answer some of the questions that will be asked, and maybe you might also be asking. So. First thing, as was pointed out by Mr. Bhaskar, there is some kind of fear about mathematics, and sometimes it goes to the other side and say people like to pride that they don't have to do anything with mathematics. Interestingly, this was not always the case, fortunately, in our country, and the thing that we are going to talk about is one of the evidences. This is the book Mathematics in Ancient Jaina Literature, which brings us here. So the ancient Jainas, flourished during the middle of the millennium BCE, before Christ, to until much later, maybe almost 1,500 or to 2,000 years. And even the earliest works, which in a way they actually concern the religion and the interrelation with the divine, etc., have a lot of involvement with mathematics. Some of that maybe will come through in what I'll say later, so let me not. And I think it is one thing.
Hello. Yes, sir.
one of the messages that we can take from ancient cultures that mathematics is something that plays an extremely important role in the course of not only everyday life but also progress in general. So now the reasons for the fear or reasons for discomfort, etc., seem to be rooted in the way it is taught, or the way you sort of the fear that is created by the environment. You tend to fear mathematics because the other boys around you do, and so on. So that's something that needs to be countered systematically. Mathematics actually is an interesting subject. I can surely assure you with my long life and experience with that, though of course I don't know how communicable that itself will be. But on the other hand, there are also a lot of people trying to improve the methods of teaching, methods of introducing mathematics, methods of making people think about mathematics and sort of make it a part of, like it's when somebody is not literate, he feels ashamed and sorry about it. When somebody is not numerate, not familiar with mathematics, should have a similar feeling. That it's important that the same kind of importance that we give to literacy should also be given to numeracy and mathematics that should come. I mean, that's the feeling.
Wonderful. So I have acknowledged the fact that I'm not numerate, but this conversation will certainly get me somewhere across. Now, sir, you have made me think. From pins to pyramids, everything has had an equation behind it while you're designing it. That is what I understand, because everything has mathematics. And like we were having our first discussion on Google Meet, we discussed how, in the book Sapiens also by Yuval Noah Harari, he mentions languages. There are complete languages, there are semi-languages, and mathematics was considered in that the latter. Now, my question from this one, I would like to proceed to the next question. Now, this makes a very interesting study around mathematics. Now, what is your story? What interested you in the study of mathematics? Because you have been to international conferences, you have been awarded accolades across the world for your research and your studies. So, what inspired you in the first place, sir?
Well, to put it briefly, I think in a nutshell, I wanted to be different. I mean, that's I was doing well in class, but sometimes more or less at the top, sometimes at the top, and so on. But most of the students in my group, they would either opt for engineering or going to medicine, etc. But somehow I had this sense of rebellion that no, I want to do something else. So firstly, and at that stage, it was primarily the focus on science. I wanted to be a scientist. So and then well, materially also things helped because I got a scholarship to pursue mathematics. There is the National Science Talent Search Scholarship, which is in fact started just, mine was the first batch that further gave a boost. So with that I could persuade my parents that here is a good reason why I should pursue science. And in the course of pursuing science, I sort of got to purer and purer of this mathematics as the purest of the sciences. That's how I came to it. So.
Wonderful, so wonderful. So this is the most unbiased language human beings can use, I think, because there's no margin of error per se.
Right. Mathematics has, as I learned, came to, and is often emphasized as science. It's also it is a whole lot of other things. It's also an art. It is also a language. Language in the sense, there's a famous quotation of Galileo, the well-known physicist, that mathematics is the language of the universe. We all have what we speak, write or communicate in our human languages, but there is the universe itself has a certain thing which is like language, and that is what it communicates in. So the laws of physics, laws of chemistry, etc., they are all governed by certain kind of interrelations which are basically mathematical. So this quotation from Galileo goes back to several hundred years now. So And but even before that, in our in the Indian tradition, there's a quotation that the mathematics is like the crest of the peacock. Yathashikha Mayuranam, that's the, and various other analogies let me not repeat. So mathematics has been, as I already mentioned, has been recognized as something of importance, and this also is an illustration that of its multifaceted qualities. Apart from being science, of course, it's in most academic situations. Mathematics is, of course, a part of the department, science faculty, and so on. But there are places where it is also clubbed with maths. There are grants coming which are based on the art aspect of mathematics. Then there is the language aspect, which you talked about. Now, as a language, it is in a language in a certain sense, but it's a different kind of language. It is meant to be more precise. In fact, one of the qualities of mathematics as a language that's very specific is that it is precise. There's no vagueness to be allowed, which of course sometimes we may make use of vagueness for our advantage, and that can be an inconvenience. But for in terms of comprehending the universe in a general, in a certain sense, a more precise language like mathematics is needed.
So, to the audience, I would like to tell you, Sir has gone across the world, and he has also had the privilege to talk on the International Congress for Mathematicians held in Zurich. And apart from that, he has also received the World Academy of Sciences Prize. Now, this tells us about the wonderful importance and the scope mathematics has to offer to us. And, you know, while I'm talking to you, I'm also dispersing my fears against around the subject. Now, sir,
don't.
this is redemption, sir. This is redemption for me. So, my next question. You are a decorated mathematician. And if we go through the articles that have been authored by a number of mathematicians, that is, again, you know, it's absolutely unbelievable. Now, I would like to understand, how did you shortlist the authors, co-authors for this book of yours, sir?
Well, in a way, I think I should say it's a somewhat long story. So, some of the things that you mentioned about my mathematics, they go back to an earlier inning of my career, so to speak. Of course, I continue to do that kind of mathematics as well. There are various topics which are mentioned in my CV, etc., that we need not go into. But at some stage, I got involved in something which is related to mathematics and yet is also related to history. And the way it happened is this in the 90s. I don't know how many of you are old enough to be relating to things about from the 90s. There was some talk of the Vedic mathematics of of calculations and schemes like that. And at the academic level, we're all conscious that there is really nothing Vedic about it, nor is it particularly important about mathematics, and there's a concern that this is going to sort of give a very lopsided view of mathematics and so on. So initially I wrote some articles about expressing some of these things about Vedic mathematics and showing its limitations, basically, that it's really not Vedic. But then came to the question to my mind: what actually is Vedic? That was a very crucial, a very important step forward in terms of coming to today's situation. Now, then I learned about there are something called the Shulva Sutras. So in the Vedic period, they were performing these yajnas, and the yajnas involved very elaborate agnis, the fireplaces they had. Most of you would have seen the fireplaces at the weddings and such things, but they're nothing compared to what the yajnas involved. They used to have very big 100 feet to 150 feet kind of platforms, and then there would be very elaborate figures, which bird or a turtle-like figure, etc., which would also extend 15 feet by 20 feet, etc. So in the course of that, anyway, not dwell too much on that. They developed a certain geometry, which is called the geometry of this. And the compositions are the Shulba Sutras. In the Shulba Sutras have various aspects of geometry. And to cut the story short, I mean, from this stage on, I got, not apart from my original identity as a mathematician, I also got into history of mathematics, mathematics from the Vedas, and then the mathematics of later periods, like you would have heard about Aryabhata, Brahmagupta, Bhaskaracharya, and all that. And then I became involved with our institution called the Indian Society for History of Mathematics. Now, the Indian Society for History of Mathematics is something which is trying to promote awareness of history, not only of Indian history, but history as a whole, as history, as the entire human world history, human history of mathematics. Because perhaps some later question is going to ask why we are doing mathematics. We'll come to that at that time. But given that we are doing mathematics, it's interesting to see how people did mathematics, not only our ancestors, but elsewhere in the world, how it was done, what were the challenges, what were the ways in which they got around them, etc., to get a comprehensive view of the subject. And so in that context, we have there are two major activities, I would say. Well, the one is the society runs a bulletin, and that's the Ganita Bharati, which was mentioned, which earlier it was edited by Professor R.C. Gupta, about whom we'll be talking a little later. Then after that, it was also edited for a brief while by one Professor Yadav, and then since last dozen years or so, I have been the editor of that. Now, the other thing that we have is annual conferences. So each year we look for a suitable host, and we organize conferences and so on. Among the people that we have come across is Professor Srenik Bandi, who is here with us today, and is also going to give such a session in the afternoon. In case you are not noticed, he's also going to talk about something similar. I don't know. I cannot anticipate exactly what he'll be talking about. Yeah. So now within this society, so just like Professor Bandi, there are various other people, other colleagues of his, Professor Anupam Jain, Deepak Jadhav, and a variety of other people. So I came to see that apart from the Vedic things that I was specializing, Vedic or the post-Vedic tradition in India that I was studying, there's also the Jain aspect of it. I mean, Professor Anupam Jain has been a prolific writer has written many books and so on. So gradually I got involved with that. Now, then comes the next stage of development, namely that the Jain community has been quite conscious of its ancient contribution to a certain level. And in 2019, the two major organizations of the Jains in the US, so the Jain Center of Greater Boston and the Federation of Jain Associations from of North America. There are two major Jain organizations. They have quite a bit of activity. Actually, they run a website, and I mean, there is not only in mathematics, but mathematics is also a component in that. And they decided to have a conference and to get various scholars together to discuss the contributions in mathematics contained in the ancient Jaina works. This was planned in 2019, and you can anticipate the story that there was a problem when the pandemic, the COVID hit us. So initially, this conference was supposed to be held in Boston, and they had that sort of equipped themselves to get so many scholars from India and everywhere elsewhere to Boston to discuss all this. But it was not to be, and so. Initially, they toyed with the idea of maybe postponing a little, but the pandemic seems to be going on and on. So finally, it was held online. There were about 25 talks with discussing various contributions, etc., including my own. I mean, they invited me because by then there was some awareness that maybe I can also make some good contribution to that. So. That's how I became involved with that. Now, after the conference, of course, this happens many times, but here it was important that if we were to bring out the proceedings, we knew that it was going to be kind of in a way the first thing, first such source book. And and in that light, it was with the sponsors, I mean the Jain organizations that I mentioned, they decided that they'll go ahead with it. They're very meticulous. They'll keep reminding authors to make contributions and so on. And then they invited me to be the co-editor. This is jointly edited by myself and Professor S G Dani, who is from Ohio University in the US. So the two of us were appointed, took charge as editors. Now we also realized that it would not be a good idea to limit only to the talks that were held there. And not all talks need to be included. That's also another aspect. Then we sought, based on what we had come across in the conference, together with our knowledge. It was also not, I mean, Professor R C Gupta, for instance, he is a very old person. He's now 87 years old. He could not have been part of the physical conference, and then somehow he was not involved on account of that. But we realized that he would be a very, very important asset for such a work. And so some of the people, there are some new people like that, and then there are also, in the course of this conference, the organization had done research on who has been working. So we invited some of those authors, and there it is. That's the book. They took the conference was in 2020, and we I think completed the task of getting all the papers contributed, and then they were rigorously refereed. I mean, we made a lot of. I mean, so unlike in many scientific things, etc., there's a certain set standard by which one can go, and then the refereeing is not needed to be that serious. But here it was needed to be more serious, because in our culture there's a certain tendency to exaggerate very often. I mean, we say things without actually having proofs, and the other people doesn't challenge because he also likes to believe that it is true. So, but on the other hand, we wanted to have a source which is authentic. Nobody should be able to challenge. No. After it's published, I don't want to get complaints that you are talking nonsense. This is not true. So, so we had to be careful about what is said in the articles. So we went over all the articles, got various changes made, and all of this was completed by about the end of 2021, and the book came out in August. Now the publishers usually like to post date the things for them to seem new for longer, so it's a 2023 publication, fresh from the oven. So. Yeah.
So we have the trade secret out. It has been there. And now, gentlemen and ladies, I would like to answer. I would like to pick your brains about few specific articles that you have mentioned in the book. Mm-hmm. So let us begin with the first one. The bane of many of our existence, the decimal system. So, sir, Article 1, We will begin with Article 1. Speaks about the decimal systems and the zero in the ancient Jaina literature, and is authored by one of the most revered mathematical historians, that is Dr. Professor R.C. Gupta.
Yeah.
So what is it about?
Okay, so coming to Article 1, as he says, and we'll talk about zero, but let me take this opportunity to say something about Professor R.C. Gupta. He needs to be much better known than he is, especially in India. Now, various subjects, in many subjects, you would all know about the Nobel Prize, right? In mathematics, mainstream mathematics, there are some prizes which may not be known to public in general, but there has been a age-old prize called a Fields Medal. So during my student days, for instance, people would have aspired, like you look upon the possibility of getting a Nobel Prize, or similarly there's the Fields Medal, and more recently, actually, from around the 2000, there's a prize called the Abel Prize, which is sort of counterpart for Nobel Prize in mathematics, and and it's given by every year, like the Nobel Prize. And this may be a bit of digression, but let me also mention that Professor S. Varadan has been one of the recipients of is of Indian origin. He's settled in the US, but he has been one of the recipients of this. Unfortunately, no, no one from India has yet got that. But coming to the topic of history of mathematics, there is a prize with similar prestige, not necessarily same amount of money, but sometimes it's not the money, but the prize, the stature. That is important, and this is called the Kenneth O. May Prize. Kenneth O. May Prize. Kenneth O. May was the first president of the International International Commission for History of Mathematics. It's there's an organization called International Mathematical Union, which looks after the interests of the world mathematical community, like holding the international congresses and so on. And there is a related organization called International Commission for History of Mathematics, and there is this prize named on the first president of that, Kenneth O. May. Now, R.C. Gupta has been the only Indian recipient of this prize, his History of Mathematics. Now, that is, of course, as far as the recognition goes, I mean, the aspect of recognition that I would like to focus on. But he has written more than 500 papers, articles on various topics in history, and that includes both the Vedic type of mathematics that I said, includes Jaina mathematics and so on. And there's a book of selected papers of his going into about 700-800 pages that we published a few years back. So, I mean, I suppose I have given you a sense of his eminence, and when we took over, I took charge as editors, I said to my co-editor that we should really involve him in a substantial way, and in fact, he has contributed 2 papers. One on the number system, including zero, which goes as the first article, and also another one, Article 8, which is on series. Now, let me come to numbers. When we grow up, we learn numbers in school, and we take it for granted. It's as if it has always been there. Of course, you know that the dogs cannot count, or the animals cannot count, or maybe the primitives did not count and might exaggerate. But the fact that there is there had to be a enormous amount of development to come to this stage is often missed. I mean, we take things for granted. No, it's not, of course, not only in mathematics, the other sciences as well. But to fill this gap is the kind of purpose of history of science or mathematics, etc. Now, numbers evolved very gradually. I mean, so the earliest traces that we go back to are from the Vedas and so on. But in the Indian context, and first of all, the progress with regard to numbers is something that sets India apart. I mean, the Europeans and all. And even the ancient versions of them, the Greeks, etc., did not have the same kind of facility with numbers that seen in the Indian context. Now, among these again, it's the Jainas who were engaged with very large. First of all, they talked about large numbers. They had ways of handling large numbers. They talked of using zero. I mean, about zero. There are two things. One is there's a certain philosophical sense of zero, and the philosophers often write huge volumes about its interpretation, etc. But I mean, I would not get carried away by that. For a mathematician, zero has a specific meaning, and that's the meaning that's relevant more for the practical life, for everything, right? And that zero evolved at a certain stage. Not from at the time of the Vedas. Vedas actually, there is no evidence of use of zero. It came later, and it's it's quite likely that Jainas were essentially the first ones to use it develop it on a substantial scale. There are various interesting features of their dealing with numbers that I can talk about, for instance. But let me quickly say a few things. First of all, there's this way of thinking of numbers systematically in terms of units, tens, hundreds, etc. This is something typically Indian, and again is seen to a great deal extent in among the Jainas. As you know, the Roman numerals are written quite differently, and the arithmetic is done quite differently, and so. Is because of the facility or the ease of working with the Indian system that later on they also adopted that, except in certain isolated instances like clocks or and so on. So this was systematically used by the Jainas. They did calculations with huge numbers. So, for instance, the diameter of the Earth was supposed to be 100,000 yojana. Yojana was the unit that was there, and then from that they're calculating the circumference. Now you have a circle. From the diameter, they calculate the circumference of the circle. So the Jambudvipa. The Jambudvipa was, in their perception, the Earth was a flat disk, and so they're calculating the circumference, and for that. So the ratio was taken to be square root of 10. So this is a number which we now take called pi, and which was then taken to be square root of 10. And the way they calculated this circumference is 100,000. You take the square of that, and that'll be a number with 1 and 10 zeros followed by that. Add one more zero because you're going to multiply by square root of 10. So the square of the number that you want is 1 followed by 11 zeros. Okay, and so they take such a number and then take this number and find the square root. Now precisely how the precise ways of how the square root was determined is not known, and in any case I don't think I'll go into the details. But it's interesting that they find it not only in terms of yojanas, when then there is a fraction, then they have smaller units. I'll not maybe spend time on going to the actual details. And if one looks at the output finally, it goes into so many details. So if you think of the ratio that it corresponds to, that comes to that's accurate to 13 decimals. So it will be correct. The factor that's involved is correct to 13 decimals. So that and this is only one instance of their kind of calculation. There are several calculations that that are involved in the Jaina mathematics. This is about the Jambudvipa, the geography, and so on, that relates to their mathematics. They also had an idea of how many human souls are there. So they had they're thinking of numbers of how many of these would be. And in that context, I'll not go into more details about actual, but that is the context in which they thought of very large numbers. And when some of the actual number they arrived at is something with 29 digits. So, and then it's a long string of the numbers, in one of which also happens to be 0, and so on. So there's a deep preoccupation of thinking of numbers, shapes, and so on. I think, yeah, we can proceed to the.
It is very overwhelming, to say the least. So many numbers. Now, sir, should I ask them what is this formula for a circle's perimeter or circumference? Can anyone? Please.
Formula.
2 pi r, sir.
Sorry?
I asked them a question. The question was the circumference of a circle. The answer is 2 pi r. Now we know why 2 pi r. So the crux of the matter is, unfortunately, in Indian education system, we are sometimes subjected to rote learning. But if someone taught me like this, if I understood what pi was, it would have made much more sense.
Right.
Thank you so much, sir, for making pi interesting for me. Otherwise, I would be having nightmares about 22/7 and why. No, never. Now, sir, moving on to the next article. Okay. Sir, I would like to talk to you about Article 3. That has been authored by you about geometry and Jaina. And with this, we are going to wrap up our session. So, sir, geometry.
Yeah. Can we screen that? What is upload?
क्या हमें presentation मिल सकता है इस पे? Geometry में होगा, I guess.
No.
Mathematics.
Yeah. Okay. And this they can see? Or?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yeah. Okay. So it's to give. I mean, I was not clear exactly how it will go. So I have some slides here which will give you an idea of. Some of them I have already covered, but yeah. So
please move. I'll let you know where to stop.
No.
Okay. Geometry.
Go back.
Yes.
Okay, let it be. Yeah, this is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah. So I already indicated to you that one of their interest was in geometry, and talked about the pi as being square root of 10 and so on. Okay, not only that, they had certain formulae about which I'd like to tell you. So here on the screen you see a circle with a diameter d, and there is a chord. Now the way these chords come in their geography is that the Jambudvipa is divided by 7 mountain ranges which go parallel to each other, and so each of them is like a chord. And they therefore wanted to know what is the relation between the chord, which is given by C there, and then the arrow. So in front of the chord, you see the arrow which joins the midpoint of the chord to the midpoint of the arc following that. So so this formula, for instance, tells you that the C equals h square root is the square root of 4 times h times d minus h. So there's the thing which relates the chord to the diameter and the arrow. arrow part H. Now, this is something at school level, which it will be a good exercise if you ask one of the young school people, and they can do it. But there are two different ways of doing it. Both of them are interesting. One is through properties of similar triangles, and the other, which I'd like to emphasize, is the Pythagoras theorem.
Oh yes, the one thing I understood.
Yeah.
Yes, Pythagoras. Yes.
Pi-
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
Right. So if you want to give a hint, say use Pythagoras theorem to prove that formula. That's the way you do it, and that is how it would say would have arrived at that. So they were doing calculations, and they were also keeping track of. I mean, it's not clear whether they discovered the Pythagoras theorem independently. There is no mention in the literature, Jaina literature, about that. But Pythagoras theorem was known in the Vedic tradition, and had percolated to others, and they were using that for the calculations that they were doing. But now let's go to the next page. Yeah. So this calculation that I'm going to talk about is something unique to the Jaina tradition.
We are pressed for time, actually, sir. And you know, it has been years since I've been trying to study mathematics.
Okay.
I did not understand. I'm sure that many would resonate with me. So, but if you can just, if you can get to the crux of the matter, because
right. This is going to be very short. The formula is written there, and I just have to tell you in a word. The arc is equal to the square root of 6 times the arrow squared, and plus the square of the chord. That's the formula for the arc. This is something unique to the Jaina tradition, and we thought it fit to have the original Ardhamagadi verse that describes the formula as the byline on the book. Now, the only other thing that please go to the next page. The only other thing that I would like to mention about this is that there were similar attempts in the Greek tradition. The Heron of Alexandria is a very well-known engineer mathematics in the Greek tradition, and I compared what the formula which he had given and what the Jaina values are, and in most ranges you find that the Jaina value actually fares better. So than the Jaina tradition. So here in the parenthesis I have written the error. So you can compare it at leisure. It's there in that. And this is something that got me excited about involving in Jaina tradition. In the article, of course, I have said more things about what they contributed, but this is something of a star piece, which is why it comes from the cover.
Well, absolutely wonderful, sir. Now I think we have had a lot of incentive to understand mathematics from a new and fresher point of view, and hopefully for the next generations to come, it won't be as daunting as it was for us. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, sir. I would like to invite you all to applaud a great mathematician that is amongst us. Thank you so much, sir. It has been a privilege.
Thank you so much, speakers, for this mesmerizing conversation. Now, I would request Mr. Abhilash Khandekar to please come forward and felicitate the author and discussant with the memento as a symbol of our love, respect, and gratitude.
Who never scored anything in mathematics is giving a memento to the That is my honor, sir.
This is a day of redemption for many of us.
Royal transference.
Please, sir, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Near extinction bird called lesser florica. This part is found in parts of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Rajasthan, but very difficult to conserve this kind of bird because grasslands are going away and agriculture is taking up, and Madhya Pradesh government has launched a scheme that in the farmlands, if they find this bird, the farmer, if he brings it to the notice of the forest department, he will get 5,000 rupees. And recently we got it raised to 25,000 rupees. Because उससे जो हल वल करते हैं बाकी सारी चीजों से तो ये इतना सुंदर बर्ड मारा जाएगा. And if biodiversity is not there, we will not do it. So that is the idea of behind this memento that we are showing. And the artist who has taken this photograph, he has put up his exhibition in the next hall called Bhalu Monde. We all request you to visit the exhibition. Thank you, sir. Wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.